What's up, Flannelverse? We're back for week 6 Thursday night football. I'm here with Adam, ShipMyMoney, Scherer. We're going to be going position by position, quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, and kickers. We will be looking at usage trends, matchups, etc. Coach speak, talking about the game from all angles. Adam, how are you doing today? How are you feeling about this slate?
Doing pretty well and feeling, I don't know, normal about the slate compared to like other showdown slates. Actually, I guess it hasn't been a good like large field showdown year for me so far. I don't think I've even really had like a true sweat yet. But it's been a pretty good like single entry. Haven't won like first place in a tournament, but I've done reasonably well in those. So it's like I feel like I've played showdown pretty well so far. It's just that in large field stuff, I just haven't come remotely close.
Yeah, I've had some sweats. I mean, I've had multiple games where in the past, in the final minute or 2 minutes, I've been like winning and just fading, like little things not happening, and it has not gone my way in showdown. So has not exactly worked out for me so far this year, but feeling good about the process. Getting close enough that I can't complain. Interesting chats. Anyway, by the way, while you're coming, please do like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. Have a long way to go and could really use your support. Also, if you want to sign up at Run the Sims, you can use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment on any of their products. We're going to be starting as usual at the quarterback position. Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts is 11,000, projected here for 46% flex ownership, 33% captain ownership. Adam, I think you guys tend to be higher than other places in terms of the projected captain ownership at the top. Like you expect it to be more condensed. I think generally the ownership projections that you use at Run the Sims tend to be more condensed at the top in terms of captain ownership than I see other places. I have not been tracking what is actually more accurate, but at 33% feels like a little bit more than I would expect, given all of the like studs we have on the slate. But how much are you getting to of Jalen Hurts, how much a captain, and how much are you stacking him?
Yeah, I mean, I used 22% projected ownership on Hurts and 8% on Dart. That got me to about 22% captain on Hurts, which I think is perfectly fine. Obviously, gives you a ton of rushing upside, rushing touchdown equity. You know that if they happen to get to the 1 yard line, he's most likely scoring a rushing touchdown. So all that looks good, but clearly none of that is stuff that is unknown to your opponents or anything. It's not like it's sneaky to play Jalen Hurts, but he does look good. And the thing with Hurts is like you do get that rushing upside, but I think I've said it on pretty much every show so far this year because they have been so run heavy, and you do expect them to be run heavy in general, but there's still going to be games where they have to throw or they choose to throw or whatever. We're already week 6 of the season, you've had multiple weeks of AJ Brown bitching about them not throwing enough. So you're still going to get those games. And I think we've gotten at least one already this year where Hurts does throw multiple touchdowns. You can bring along multiple pass catchers. So there are, different ways you can construct the Hurts captain lineups. Just kind of looking through mine right now, kind of a mix. Doesn't look like I have necessarily like naked Jalen Hurts captain, but definitely have at least a couple lineups in here that are pretty lightly stacked, like Barkley and Jahan Dotson or something, not the most appealing guys to pair with Hurts. Also some that are pretty heavily stacked. We have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Goddard. So kind of a mix of how I'm approaching those Hurts captain lineups. You're muted.
It's nice in a way that you can spread out the different ways you play Jalen Hurts a captain. Like you said, not sneaky at all, but somebody that you want to be having a good amount of exposure to. Einsteinium asks, can I victory lap switching to Parker Washington over Diami Brown? Adam, somebody was trolling me on Twitter for suggesting playing Diami Brown, that he was going to play more than Parker Washington. Just want to point out, Diami Brown, 65% route participation. So the thesis was correct that it was going to be
way more than Parker Washington.
Yeah, the thesis was he's going to take back his role that he had early on in the season, some places were not projecting it to go that way. So the thesis was 100% correct. Parker Washington just happened to score a touchdown, and Dyami Brown had multiple targets that were, I mean, it was incompletions anyway, but also called back due to penalties. So it doesn't look like targets. So no, I don't think you can victory lap swapping to the 26.5% route participation guy, but he was also lower owned. So
yeah, honestly, I mean, in the context of like he was a lot lower owned and maybe he'll score a touchdown, like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, he was fine.
But yeah, I mean, from that was actually one of the first things I noticed when I was going through and working on the first set of projections this week was because I projected it the way that it went, where Dyami Brown takes his role back, Parker Washington goes back to being a clear wide receiver 4, and I thought that 2K Dyami Brown looked really good and was going on their own. So one of the first things I looked at was like, oh, did I get that wrong? And it's like, nope, got it completely right. Just didn't work the way that I would have liked it to.
Yeah, like he was like clearly a great play at 2000 for his role, and like didn't get a ton of ownership. He ended up, I think, 27% or something. Yeah. So like even with the ownership he ended up at, which was higher than places had it projected, still was like a smash of a play. It just didn't work out, which is going to happen sometimes. So I guess yeah, but it worked out. And Parker Washington, to be clear, was a fine play, but he was 3,600 and ran 26.5% of the routes. So I don't know.
Yeah. Because that was also, I had bet under 1.5 receptions for Washington.
Yeah.
So that was the other reason I looked. I was like, oh, was that a bad bet? And I'm like, no, he ran 26% of routes. He's not getting targets.
Yeah.
He just happened to catch 2.
It is what it is. That's it. Happens sometimes on showdown slates. Just tilted me when somebody was trolling me about it on Twitter. Like, I thought you said Dyami Brown, not Parker Washington. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I can't predict the future. I think I accurately like assess the situation.
Yeah.
All right.
If you know going in, like how often those two were on the field, you're playing
right.
more Dyami Brown than Parker Washington.
Yeah, exactly. Jackson Dart, 35% flex ownership, 8% captain ownership. So far through 2 games has 17 carries, averaging 54.5 rushing yards per game. I knew that he could run a little. I did not know that he was going to be running as much as he has so far. He's also exited both games with injuries, so still some concern that he's going to, kind of tone that down a little bit. I doubt it, but I don't know. How are you feeling about Jackson Dart? How much are you stacking him up?
Yeah, I'm getting to him a good amount. I think I'm like 2x captain right now. Like I said, I had him projected for like 8% captain ownership in the stuff that I ran. I have 15% at captain, 38% at flex. The rushing upside just looks really good. And it is a good Philadelphia defense. But if you look at schedule adjusted fantasy points, not that they've been bad as far as allowing rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks, but it's one of the only spots that they're even neutral and not just really, really limiting teams. And then you also have, the context of this Giants offense where they are missing playmakers, which on the one hand is just not good for moving the ball in general, especially against a good defense. But you're expecting designed runs for Jackson Dart. You're expecting him, whatever offense the Giants do have, you're expecting him to be very involved in it and then to kind of manufacture stuff for him because they are really limited in terms of guys that you even want the ball in their hands. And Jackson Dart is one of them. So I like the rushing upside that you get from him. He's averaging like 5.7 yards per carry so far through his first 2 games. So I am over the field on him at captain. At flex, had him projected for 45%. So I'm a little bit lower than the field at flex, higher at captain, slightly higher in the aggregate. As far as how lineups with him look, I would expect it to be kind of the same thing that we were saying about Hurts. Like you can go different ways. Obviously, Hurts has more appealing pass catchers to get him with. But I have a Scatterboo, Bellinger, Theo Johnson, Robinson. Like I have some Giants onslaughts here with him at captain. Here's one where the only quote unquote pass catcher is Scatterboo, Robinson plus Theo Johnson. So another just kind of mix of different lineup types with Jackson Dart at captain. I think there's a variety of ways he can get there. You are muted again.
Yeah. All right. Now I'm not muted. Not a great matchup for either quarterback. Second worst matchup for Jackson Dart in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game by the Eagles defense. 7th worst matchup for Jalen Hurts. So not particularly strong matchups, but on a showdown slate, it factors in a little bit for me, but not something that you can factor in too much because you only have so many options. So I think I'll be playing a lot of both Jackson Dart and Jalen Hurts. My bigger takeaway is like 8% captain ownership, definitely a number that I'd want to be higher on Jackson Dart. Like he's 10,200, but as a quarterback who, again, averaging 54.5 rushing yards per game so far, looks like a pretty strong option at only 8% projected captain ownership. So yeah, I like Dart quite a bit here. Let's move on to running backs. We can start with Saquon Barkley in a great matchup here with the Giants. How much are you getting to of Saquon?
So for Barkley, I think he's actually really interesting with this being a Thursday night game and him being a little bit banged up. I am still getting to him, a pretty decent amount, 15% at captain, 35% at flex. Had him projected for 42% flex and 20 captain. So I'm a little bit below the field on him. Still clearly expect him to be the leading rusher for the Eagles. But we did see one thing that I thought was interesting as far as usage goes is keep in mind that Will Shipley was hurt for a couple weeks this season. In the games where Shipley has actually played, so when you look at rushing market share for Saquon, week 1, you had 37% go to Hurts, which is a little bit higher than you expect for him on average. But 8% to A.J. Dillon, 8% to Shipley. Barkley came in at 47%. And then last week, you got 55 Barkley, 18 Dillon, 9 for Shipley. And then Hurts was at 18%, which is a little bit lower than you expect. The 3 weeks where Shipley either was inactive or just wasn't used, Barkley was 60 to 67% in those 3 weeks. So I do think, again, not that you're like giving a ton of work to non-Saquon Barkley running backs, but we have seen them cut into Barkley's workload a little bit in the weeks that they can. And now you do have the Thursday night game also. So still haven't projected for like 17 and a half, 18 carries, clearly the lead back here. But it is a situation where I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him just maybe lose a carry or two compared to what you would normally expect.
Yeah, Dropping Dimes asks, is anyone worried about Saquon's knee soreness? Only had 9 touches last week. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a concern because otherwise, like, if he were fully healthy and we just expected him to be full go, like, this is an awesome matchup with the Giants, but definitely a bit of a concern that he has not been, fully practicing throughout the week. Would be the like 7th or 8th best matchup in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game, and primarily a better matchup even on the ground, which is where Saquon really benefits. So yeah, I would love Saquon if we thought he's fully healthy. I'm still going to be playing a good amount, but I don't love him enough that I'm going to be above weight. If these are the numbers, 39% flex, 24% captain, I kind of anticipate that I would be below weight on both of those numbers. Where did you say you ended up? Are you above or below those numbers?
Slightly below, but like I'm in that kind of spot that I think I'd be pretty happy with. And obviously, I mean, it's a 1-game slate, so you can nitpick all you want, but he's still going to be like, you can't, unless you were to just say, I think he's actually really hurt and he's just like barely going to play, and whatever reasons, like, but beyond something really extreme like that, you can only knock Barkley so far. He's still going to be one of the highest projected guys. Excuse me, but he's, for me right now, at a spot that I'd be pretty comfortable with exposure wise. Like, he's in a good chunk of my lineups. If he goes and has a big game, I still have plenty of opportunities to win because I have plenty of him, but I am a little bit below the field in the aggregate. I have 15% at captain. I have 35% at flex. So it's plenty of chances if he does do well, but at the same time, it's not a slate where I'm slamming him in like I would on some other slates. And I do think that the combination of the knee soreness, Shipley being back, Thursday night game, like, it all just points to him still clearly being the lead back, but just not being quite as heavily involved as usual.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like exactly where I would like to be, like around 50% total. You're a little bit underweight, both captain and in the flex, but also like you're not taking a huge stand there because it could be awesome. He's Saquon. Yeah, I think that sounds like exactly how I'd like to play it.
Like, in terms of the order for me at flex right now, and obviously we haven't gotten to every position, but if the slate started right now, it would be captain rather. It would be AJ Brown 1, Jalen Hurts 2, Dart and Saquon combined for 3. So, again, I'm going to have plenty of Barkley lineups because he is still going to be one of the highest projected guys on the slate, even when you're trying to account for him probably being a little bit more limited than usual. But, there are some guys that I like a little bit more.
Yep. What about the backup? So you talk about, we do have Will Shipley back, but he's 4,400. AJ Dillon's 4,000. Bigsby 2,400. Are you getting to Shipley or any of these secondary running backs on the Eagles?
Not getting to any Dillon, not getting to any Shipley. Again, it's, I took, it's not like you have one guy either, at least, the way that you're expecting it to be. You don't have one direct beneficiary. If you do go down that path of, well, what if they, limit Barkley some? It's very likely that if they do limit Barkley, you're just getting like split carries of the non-Barkley carries between Shipley and Dillon. So they still end up not being appealing unless one of them happens to break one, which, that at that point, you're just in the territory of like, on every single showdown slate, you can pick any player and say, well, if he breaks one, good.
Yeah. If Will Shipley was like $2,000 less expensive, I think I would have a good amount of interest just because he has, some standalone and then some contingent value. But now it's like you're really banking on that, mostly the contingent value. Obviously some standalone also, but yeah, it's a tough price tag there. I'll make sure I have a little bit of Will Shipley. I think I can full fade AJ Dillon and Tank Bigsby.
Why are you going Shipley ahead of Dillon, just out of curiosity?
I think that they like Shipley better than Dillon, and I think it's just better than Dillon. I guess Dillon does have the goal line role, but like I think so Dillon to me is like, unless he scores multiple touchdowns, if he scores one touchdown, I don't think he gets there. Like that's, he'll have 7 total fantasy points because I just don't think he's going to see enough work. Now let's see. Last week he had 2 carries for AJ Dillon. I just think so Shipley, I think, has the better ability to put up 15 fantasy points on one play, I guess, than AJ Dillon is what it comes down to. And I think so I think like standalone value, I think Shipley, just if they have the same workload, even though I think AJ Dillon more likely to hit 7 than Will Shipley, I don't think that pays it off at their salaries. So because of their salaries, I think like to pay off this salary, Will Shipley is more likely to, both in terms of standalone and then in terms of contingent upside. I also think it would be Will Shipley would get more of the work. I don't think they really like AJ Dillon.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then you could also make the case like, what if they're, this is Shipley's 3rd week back from injury. Maybe he is just the backup running back now, and Dillon is not going to get any carries. Because like if you look at market share last week, AJ Dillon was 2x Shipley, but like you said, that's like 2 carries to 1. So that could easily, this week it's just okay. Like Shipley's fully healthy. AJ Dillon, you're sitting next to Tank Bigsby all game, and now this backfield is Barkley, Shipley. That's not how I'm projecting it. That's not what I think, but there is that potential path. I think that path is more likely than AJ Dillon gets all the backup carries and Will Shipley just isn't involved.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Again, and like AJ Dillon could score multiple goal line touchdowns, which would be the most infuriating thing ever, but it happens on showdown slates all the time. So it's like, I'm not saying there's 0 chance that he gets there, but I think Shipley has better odds there.
Yeah. And to be clear, I have neither one. So,
okay. Yeah. Right. Let's move on to Giants running backs. I assume we're not doing Tank Bigsby, right?
No.
Giants running backs. So we do have Tyrone Tracy returning for this game. Cam Scadaboo, though, has had an awesome workload with Tracy out. He's 10,000 projected for 17% flex ownership, 2% captain ownership. I think this is one where you might need to IKB those numbers up. What did you put in for the Cam Scadaboo projected ownership?
I have 19% flex, 3% captain.
Okay, so you only IK. That's probably fair. I don't know. This is one where it's kind of difficult to gauge because people love Cam Scadaboo. He's one of those like darlings of the fantasy community. So I'd be pretty surprised if he came in lower than that. I think he's more likely to come in higher than that number. But also, you never know because again, it's a lot of the field is just pro DFS players and people putting in a lot of lineups, and he just isn't going to look as good with Tyrone Tracy coming back. Jordan Renan came out, ESPN. I don't know, you can put as much weight into this as you want to, but said that Cam Scadaboo is the future and present of the Giants backfield. The last showdown slate that we did on the Giants, I was saying like I think Cam Scadaboo's taken over. He's like clearly becoming the lead back here, and that was not the case at all early in the game before Tyrone Tracy's injury. Tyrone Tracy came in and was like, and he was looking good. So it was like I think it was going to continue to be the Tyrone Tracy. Ended up working out for us, but now I'm like, okay, they're saying that again, and the reason I said that is because that's what everybody was saying. Like that was kind of like if you read the tea leaves, it was like he seems to be taking over this backfield. He's been kind of effective at it. And now people are saying the same thing. I think it's the Cam Scadaboo backfield. How confident are we that it is the Cam Scadaboo backfield at this point, and how much do you want to get to?
Not super confident, but the one thing that I think does kind of push me that direction is more so that it is the first week back for Tracy. So I think that like I'm still expecting a split, but have it projected somewhere around like 2 carries to 1 for Scatterboo. And I am still getting there. One other negative for him is that you do expect Jackson Dart to target him a bit less than Russell Wilson was. He is still at 0.2 targets per route run with Dart, though. I think he was high last week. He was low in the first week with Dart. But you do expect that to come down a little bit from his season average. But like, I kind of think that you can approach this backfield. On the one hand, you can approach it where, like you said, like Scatterboo is a fantasy darling for everybody. And we know that everybody just sees what they want to see as far as their priors go. After the game where Tracy got hurt, like I literally got in a Twitter argument because I pointed out to somebody that Scatterboo got there from what we saw. Scatterboo obviously benefited a ton from Tracy being hurt. And he basically told me to get the fuck out of here with needing Tracy to get hurt for Scatterboo. And it's like Tracy touched the ball on 10 of the first 14 carries.
Yeah.
And you're going to argue that like it was a good game for Scatterboo anyway or something. So like on the one hand, you have that and you can like leverage against it and just say, okay, well, nobody knows what the hell the Giants are going to do. And maybe you just get 7K Tracy. And that's really what kind of had happened in that game where Tracy got hurt. Like I thought Scatterboo was the lead guy. I agreed with everybody, but then you got this ownership gap where it was like, okay, when I account for the fact that I don't know, I'm still going to play Tracy more than the field. And you can kind of go that route here, but with it being the first game back, and you do have a couple more weeks of Scatterboo playing reasonably well. Did have a big fumble last week, if I remember correctly, but overall, playing reasonably well. He's more ingrained, more familiar with the offense, all of that. You have the natural like rookie progression stuff going on. I think it makes sense to project Scatterboo as the lead guy. He doesn't have great props, but also the matchup is just shit. So I do think Scatterboo's probably the lead guy. I have more of him than Tracy. I have like 3% captain, 39% flex on Scatterboo. I have no captain and like 19% flex on Tracy.
You have 39% flex on Scatterboo, so you actually have a fair amount.
Yeah, I have a lot right now, which I don't really love. I kind of would like that to come down a little bit. I only had him projected for 19% ownership, and then Tracy projected for 9. So at those ownership numbers at flex, I'm over the field on both of them, which on the one hand, I am fine with because they both catch passes. Again, you're not expecting as many targets from Dart, but at the same time, like they don't have guys to throw to. Not that Slayton is a huge target earner, but now you have him out. You have outside wide receivers now with Bo Collins and Jalen Hyatt. Like neither of these guys are guys that the Giants want to be peppering with targets. You have Wandale, who is solid. You have Theo Johnson, who has looked very good with Jackson Dart. But like on the one hand, kind of like I was saying with Jackson Dart, where the offense is likely to struggle, period. But especially, in Dart's case, you kind of can like spam some rushing points. I think in the case of the running backs here, you can potentially, in full PPR, kind of just spam PPR points where, yeah, they're probably not going to get a ton of yards and sustain a ton of drives against this defense, but they're also very likely, sort of like we saw in that Kansas City game for Scatterboo, where Kansas City was taking Malik Neighbors away, and you were just getting underneath route after underneath route for Scatterboo. You could kind of see something like that, where it's just like, we're not going to be able to move the ball downfield on passes to Bo Collins. Let's not even bother. Let's just run a bunch of short routes where we're getting the ball in the hands of Wandale, we're getting the ball in Scatterboo's hands, we're getting the ball in Tracy's hands, trying to create space. And even if they don't succeed in getting yards, you suddenly just have 4 or 5 catches for these guys.
Yeah. The issue is the price, obviously. Like you need like a fair number of fantasy points to actually pay it off, unless it is like a 5-1 Eagles lineup where it's like you just need somebody from the Giants, and suddenly like if Dart doesn't get there and Scatterboo gets 12, like that's just what you need maybe from the Giants. I don't know. It's an interesting one. And you're also getting to 19% Tyrone Tracy, so you're actually playing a fair amount of the Giants backfield. Are you getting to any $2,000 Devin Singletary?
Like 3%.
This is 3 games without Tyrone Tracy, and Tracy is returning. But if you expect him to return to a minimal role, the workload for Scatterboo has been awesome the past 3 games. 50 carries, so just under 17 per game, 16 targets, more than 5 targets per game over the past 3, on 53.5% route participation. So if he even retains 85% of that or something, which I don't know if we would expect that, but maybe Tracy more likely to cut into Singletary than Scatterboo. The coach speak was that all 3 of them will play, I believe. Let's see. if we were on the 7th, Brian Dable said we'll use all 3 of our running backs if Tracy plays this week. So yeah, it's expect all of them to play, but Scadaboo still probably gets the majority of the workload. Looks pretty good here. I think that's good enough for running backs.
So I wanted to kind of point one thing out and push back a little bit on chat, because like I don't disagree. Drop a Nine said that's a lot of overpriced Scadaboo. I think Scadaboo is overpriced relative to $10,000 as far as just like if this were a main slate or something, you're obviously not like considering him. But I think that he's like right now, I have him as the 5th highest projected player on the slate. I think you could I think Hurts, Barkley, Dart, Brown are clearly projected or clearly higher. Like you can't even argue that Scadaboo should be higher than those guys. I think you can make a case for either of Smith or Robinson to be ahead of Scadaboo. I think those 3 are kind of their own tier. And then there's nobody else on the slate that you can even argue, I don't think, should be projected higher than Scadaboo. So this is just kind of a weird slate where, everything is still relative. It's not just about raw salary. And this slate doesn't have a lot of good players, period, because the Giants offense is depleted and the Eagles offense uses like 2.5 players, period, like total.
Right. True. Yeah, I think like it makes sense to get to a lot of Scadaboo. I will say in just going back on what I had said, which was you do need an Eagle in every lineup. Like if it is going to end up being an Eagle, or you need a Giant in every lineup. If it ends up being an Eagles onslaught, like you would expect it to be the expensive Eagles, in which case it's probably going to be a cheap Giant that gets there instead. So I think that argument actually doesn't really do that much for Scadaboo. He would actually need to put up to be the only Eagle or the only Giant. He probably actually needs to put up a real fantasy score.
The first Eagles onslaught lineup I pulled up does have Scadaboo, but for the most part, there are some. But
what is your value in that lineup? Is it like kickers and defenses, or do you find
Kylan Granson and Jahan Dotson?
Okay, interesting.
So disgusting Eagles.
Yeah.
There's another one here that it's Jake Elliott, Jahan Dotson, Eagles defense.
Okay, nice.
But like another nice thing about Scadaboo too, going back to like the PPR spamming thing, like even if they're trailing, you could just get. I do think he's relatively game script proof. You're not playing him expecting them to run him 20 times. If they're down by 20 points in the 4th quarter, you could just very easily watch a drive where the Eagles are in prevent and Scadaboo is just catching 8-yard pass after 8-yard pass.
Right. Yeah. True.
And they're more likely to use Scadaboo there than use a banged up Tyron Tracy.
Yeah. And more likely than Devin Singletary also. Yeah, no, that is true. He's got a lot of ways to potentially work out. I suspect I'll be underweight to, like, you have him in over 40% of your lineups. I think I'll have less than that of Scadaboo, just because I think that I'll rather lean on the Eagles. But I also think that that's like, viable, like not far off from that, I guess.
Yeah, like ideally, I think in my head, I end up getting at least a little bit less than I have right now. It's definitely like a projection that I'm going to at least go back. People ask me a lot, if you don't manually set exposure caps, like, you just take what you get. And yes, but like in a spot like this, I do want to go back and make sure that I'm at least comfortable with exactly how I have Scadaboo projected. I'm going to do that. But if I were to go back and look and see, like, I don't really think I can, there's not really things that I want to lower as far as inputs go. I'm fine with it, because you can make all these different arguments for, like, Scadaboo doesn't have to have a great game in terms of yardage or productivity or efficiency to still be a good PPR play in the context of a slate that doesn't have a ton of great skill plays.
Right. Yep. All right, let's move on to wide receivers. We will start with the Eagles side here. 2 weeks ago, we've got the squeaky wheel narrative. Both Devonta Smith and AJ Brown upset with their roles on the Eagles. Devonta Smith actually had a pretty nice game. AJ Brown was shadow covered by Patrick Surtain last week. Now, I don't know, not the best matchup here against the Giants, but AJ Brown 9,800, Devonta Smith 9,600. Brown just getting 25% and 12 in the flex. Devonta Smith 17 and 4 in the flex. How much are you getting to of the top receivers on the Eagles?
Getting to a ton of AJ Brown here. Right now, he's my highest owned captain in like 24 to 25% of my lineups. And then I have him at flex about 35%. It's the upside of if the Eagles do either, like the Eagles just throw a little bit more than expected, We did talk about, maybe they try and limit Barkley a little bit here. Obviously, the most likely way they do that is just you mix in AJ Dillon and Will Shipley a little bit more. But maybe you just take advantage of the opportunity to shut AJ Brown up for a week and throw him the ball. So there's that. But also, as far as, and again, this is just one data point. You don't want to get too carried away with it. But in terms of coverage types, he's actually, for all pass catchers this week, grades out at the top of my model in terms of expected increase in targets per route run, based on what I'm projecting the Giants to do against the Eagles. So, again, you fall back. The issue with the Eagles is always they prefer to run the ball, and the Giants may not be able to make them not run the ball. But the upside for Brown is huge. We know that he is very, very good when he has the ball in his hands. He can make big plays down the field. And so I am getting to a lot of him, and hopefully this is just a good week for AJ Brown.
Yeah, I mean, even just using the fantasy points number, wide receiver coverage matrix, AJ Brown, of all players, all receivers and tight ends on the slate, or on the full week, 10th best in terms of the coverage grade for AJ Brown. So it looks like a phenomenal play. That's interesting, because from what I was looking at earlier, just looking at the schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, it didn't grade out exceptionally well for AJ Brown. It graded out exceptionally well for Devontae Smith instead, because Smith runs the majority of his routes from the slot. So in total, it was kind of a fine matchup for AJ Brown. Doesn't really stand out. Plus 0.8 for lining up out right. Whereas for slot receivers, second best matchup for Devontae Smith. But I think we need to. I've been looking for reasons to play AJ Brown, and I think you've convinced me that AJ Brown is a fantastic play. I wanted to play him from the narrative angle of these receivers are unhappy. They're squeaky wheels. They're not getting the ball enough. Last week, I mean, AJ Brown did see 8 targets in that game, had 5 receptions, but he was covered by Patrick Surtain. So it was Devontae Smith was one who saw 11 targets in that game. So I kind of wonder if, all right, so we got it to Devontae Smith last week because AJ Brown was getting the shadow coverage. Maybe this is the AJ Brown week after the squeaky wheel narrative, make him happy. So from that perspective, I want to play AJ Brown. So I'm glad you pointed out the coverage matchup, because it looks pretty good there.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I don't know how Fantasy Points does theirs, but mine isn't accounting for actual efficiency. It's just accounting for targets per, because our model already has efficiency stuff in it. So what I have is just looking at different coverage types and then what I expect the opponent to do and how AJ Brown has done in terms of targets per route run against different coverages. So the fantasy points below expectation obviously is factoring in actual productivity.
Right.
But in terms of projecting just additional targets per route run, it looks like a really good spot for Brown.
Yep. Love that. What about Devontae Smith? So like I said, he's running a majority of his routes from the slot. I want to say 60.9% or something. In terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, it is the Giants have allowed the second most to slot receivers. So how much are you getting to of Devontae Smith relative to AJ Brown and other studs on the slate?
Yeah, I have less than Brown. I only have 1% captain, 16% flex right now. And I kind of would like to have more because I do think it's a good spot for him too. He does still grade out as above average for me in targets per route run. The issue is that it's not nearly as big a margin as AJ Brown. So it's kind of I was DMing with you talking about the Chargers last week, where you had all these people being like, oh, it's Ladd McConkey week because Washington struggles against slot receivers. And it's they struggle against everybody. So Quentin Johnston's going to be open and Keenan Allen's going to be open. And it's kind of the same thing here, where I have it as a positive matchup for Devontae Smith, but I have it as a more positive matchup in terms, again, of just earning targets for AJ Brown. So I do have that bigger bump on AJ Brown. It's still a good spot for Devontae Smith. I do think it's interesting that he is essentially the same price as AJ Brown. I think that this is a spot too where, yes, in any individual game, Devontae Smith can beat out AJ Brown, but Devontae Smith still is somebody that projects behind AJ Brown pretty much all the time. So getting them at the same price, I do expect in general to just prefer getting to AJ Brown. And the ownership projection that I have right now favors AJ Brown, but not by like a huge margin. It's 34% at flex to Brown, 24 to Smith, 8% at captain to Brown, 5% to Smith. So given that and the way that I have them projected right now, it's not like a comfortable, oh, I don't like Devonta Smith here, I don't want to play him. It's more so I really want AJ Brown at these numbers, and it is going to cost me some Devonta Smith.
Right. Well, captain, I mean, what do you have for Devonta Smith captain ownership? Because that's where he appeals to me more, is that 4% projected captain ownership does seem pretty good, like a number I'd want to be overweight on. How much what do you have him project for? What do you get into a captain?
I have him projected for 5% at captain. I only have one.
Okay, interesting. So he does not look great at 5% captain ownership for you. All right, are you getting to any Jahan Dotson, John Mechie, anybody else on the Eagles?
I know I have some Dotson. I've already seen that. Let me find it. I don't know why neither of their names are. I have like one lineup with Mechie. I have 14% Dotson at flex, which obviously you're not super excited about, but he should at least be on the field a decent amount. Hopefully gets a target down the field and does something with it.
Yeah, that's the grossest thing I've ever heard, and I will not accept it. But I'll play some. I'll play a little bit of Jahan Dotson, of course.
I mean, he's on the field a lot.
I know. It's just he just like doesn't ever get it done. I don't know.
Have him projected for 9.5 targets or 9.6% targets per route run here, which is obviously really low, like an 8.5% target share.
Yeah. Richie says I'm getting to a bunch of Marset. You mean like Smith Marset? Is he even on?
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I don't know who you're referring to. All right. On the Eagle side, so Malik Neighbors has been out for a couple games now. Now we've got Darius Slayton out. So this is where it gets kind of even more interesting for the Giants receivers, because somebody's going to be running routes. We know Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be one of those players. He's 7,200. So pretty inexpensive of the guys you project to get a lot of opportunities here. 45% flex ownership, 9% captain ownership. How much are you getting to of Wan'Dale Robinson?
Getting to 8% captain, 31% at flex. I think clearly of the wide receivers on the Giants, he looks the best. Like he's the only wide receiver that they actually intended on being a wide receiver for them this year, and regularly on the field. He is somebody that through the first couple of weeks hasn't necessarily been targeted a ton by Jackson Dart. We've seen Jackson Dart really funneling the ball to tight ends so far, but at the same time, you do have Wan'Dale Robinson generally working kind of those shorter routes. He's somebody that certainly could again, be somebody that even if like they're playing from behind or something, is just getting open underneath the coverage and then getting tackled, and you're getting 1.8 points per drop back basically, while they just feed him short passes. So we've also seen in the past when Neighbors has been hurt, an increase in opportunities for Robinson, but a pretty big decrease in efficiency. He is somebody that again, limited sample, but has not shown that he can really produce at a high level when he is a focal point for the defense and is not benefiting from Malik Neighbors' gravity, pulling people away from him. So it's one of those like tricky spots to project where the ceiling without Malik Neighbors is higher because there's just more footballs that can theoretically be thrown to Wan'Dale Robinson. But the median projection doesn't necessarily increase proportionally to the ceiling because on average, the efficiency is going to drop even though the opportunities are going to increase.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, you're under the field on Wan'Dale Robinson overall, but I mean slightly over at captain, I guess. Looks okay. The price tag is really nice. Obviously, you can get those Wan'Dale Robinson like 12 target games, which is always nice. But yeah, not the best matchup here. Emir Smith Marset is a receiver on the Giants, so I guess that is who Richie Smalls. I was like, I know this name, and it's because he was on the Vikings. Apparently, he was drafted to the Vikings. Is why I even know the name. But not
so as far as I know, these guys haven't been activated from the practice squad yet. So like, because I just saw somebody else mention Humphrey. Unless it came out like within the last half hour or so, it is possible one of these guys gets elevated, or like it's not going to be all of them probably.
Yeah, so we'll have to pay attention. I mean, that's something that comes out. I think we're still a couple hours away from when you get those practice squad, like the deadline for the practice squad elevations, at least. So those are names that like by tonight. So I'll be doing a show again before lock as usual tonight. I will have a better idea of who is active for the Giants, so we can cover those guys if they end up being activated. But as of right now, we don't know that they're going to be in the game. So after Wandale Robinson, we've got Jalen Hyatt and Bo Collins. I'll bring up the route share report for the Giants. Yeah, so Wandale, 90 and 89% route participation in the past couple of games. Darius Slayton was, I think he was injured in game in week 5, if I remember correctly. So we saw slight increase for Jalen Hyatt there. Bo Collins up from 27% to 37%. I think generally we're expecting Jalen Hyatt's workload to go to Darius Slayton's to go to Jalen Hyatt and Bo Collins primarily is kind of the way that it's being projected. What are you doing with the tertiary, secondary options on the Giants wide receivers?
So one other thing to mention with Robinson too, just because I happened to look at it and had forgotten. In terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points, absolute by a mile worst slot matchup for wide receivers is the Eagles. I don't know who's going to be playing right wide receiver versus left, but that's been beneficial, I guess. But I'm getting like 8-9% of both of them. They're just both at these price points where they're cheap enough where if they make a big play, they're going to look good. Like you're expecting, some downfield targets for Jalen Hyatt at 3,200. You'll probably see some of the same for Bo Collins at 3K. But I also don't expect them to be that heavily targeted because you do have non-wide receivers that will earn targets. In addition to Wandale Robinson being somebody that's likely to earn targets, I do think you're going to see Theo Johnson heavily targeted. I do think you're going to see Daniel Bellinger getting a decent amount. And then I think you're going to see the running backs, Tracy and Scadaboo, both targeted a good amount. Also, I don't think the Giants are going to throw the ball that much unless they just are getting destroyed right out of the gate. Like, I would think that they would prefer to limit the number of times the Eagles have the ball, keep the ball in Jackson Dart's hands. They're going to be a more run-heavy offense with Jackson Dart than with Russell Wilson. We've already seen that. They're running like 54% of the time through his first 2 games. So I expect, something in the like 30, 31, 32 pass attempt range on average for the Giants too. So I think they're both just firmly in they're going to be on the field 70, 75, 80% of dropbacks, maybe more. If certainly could make big plays, but I don't think this is like either of them is super likely to go out there and get 7, 8, 9 targets or something, because I still think they're in terms of targets per route run. I expect them to be behind Robinson, Johnson, Tracy, and Scadaboo in terms of opportunities.
Yeah, not expecting a ton of opportunities here. Yeah. I looked it up. So Bo Collins is at least who Fantasy Points has as the right wide receiver, which theoretically has the better matchup here, depending on how that actually splits out. So maybe he benefits from the matchup a little bit. But as you pointed out, Wandale 76.5% route participation. That's like one of the highest like slot rates in the league. Like even most slot receivers, it's like they're running 60%. He's actually running just primarily out of the slot, and it's not a great matchup here for Wandale. Obviously, can still get the PPR his way there, even in a bad matchup, but that is worth noting. So for now, we're playing Wandale, Jalen Hyatt, Bo Collins. Are you playing any Gunnar Olszewski or any other Giants receiver? Obviously, this is going to change based on who is activated from the practice squad.
Yeah, obviously, possible that you get to like some min salary guy. I have 3% Olszewski. He's a special teamer, but probably runs 10-15% of routes now. Maybe they scheme him a screen or something, and he is 1K. You do get a price difference at least between him, Collins, and Hyatt, so that's nice, but obviously not somebody that you want to get carried away with at all.
Yeah. Let's move on to tight ends. Dallas Goedert has had a pretty decent season so far. Pretty involved for the Eagles. Projected for 32% flex, 2% captain ownership. He's 6,400, so one of the more expensive tight ends that you'll find on a showdown slate. But he's been, as I said, fairly involved so far on the season. Dallas Goedert. Nope, got to scroll over. 21 targets in 4 games, so just over 5 targets per game, 79.5% route participation. How much are you getting to of Dallas Goedert, and are you playing any of the backup tight ends?
So for Goddard, getting to 2% at captain, 15 at flex. He's another one that I think is interesting in the same way that Devontae Smith was, where I think he actually looked slightly positive as far as the coverage type stuff. I'm double checking now, but I think I had him as slightly positive, but just not as positive as AJ Brown. So like I'm not comfortable in terms of just not playing a lot of him, but I do just really want AJ Brown here. So it's costing me, I think, a little bit of him, but clearly he's one of the 3 guys, well, 4 guys if you include Barkley, but 3 non-running backs that Hurts does throw the ball to, and he is fine at 6,400. I had him projected for 26% flex and 5% captain, so I am below both of those numbers right now. Wouldn't be too upset if they come up. I am getting to Kylan Granson right now a lot. Like, that's one that I would like to go away. He's in a ton of lineups for me at $200. It does make me think that whichever Giants wide receiver gets elevated probably starts to find his way into lineups, because why would I want 38% Kylan Granson and no whoever gets elevated for the Giants when I could play 16 or 17 of each.
Right.
But it does seem to me that, and it does kind of, I think, make sense in the context of this slate to be taking shots at these really cheap guys, because there's not a super strong mid-range. Like, ideally, I want the quarterbacks. I want AJ Brown. I want Devontae Smith. I want Dallas Goedert to some extent. I don't really care if I get Bo Collins and Jalen Hyatt and, kickers and defenses. Like, I'm going to get some, obviously, but it's like a top heavy slate in terms of the guys that I actually want in my lineups. So on slates like that, I don't mind as much taking shots at the guys that you're hoping catch a pass or two. But at the same time, if between now and lock I were to not have as much Kylan Granson, that would also be good. I do want to see exactly what I had in terms of ownership projection. Calcaterra being out, obviously makes things look a little bit better for Granson as well.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding you correctly, when you say it's a top heavy slate, what you mean is you're going to be concentrated on like the high end pay ups and then just spread out the cheaper players, essentially, like, because we have so many options and none of them look amazing. You're just going to spread out to Bo Collins, Jalen Hyatt, the backups, whatever. Is that kind of how you're playing, or what do you mean by that exactly?
I just mean it more as like it naturally sets up as like stars and scrubs, where there's just not $6,000 players that I'm going to be super upset if I don't really have.
Right.
Again, like, I like Dallas Goedert, I like Theo Johnson, but if I happen to go into this slate and I'm just getting a lot of Jalen Hurts, Jackson Dart, AJ Brown, mixing in some, I'm getting a lot of Scatterboo right now, mixing in some Devontae Smith, and it's like if I'm getting to those guys, and it happens to be costing me Theo Johnson, Dallas Goedert, and it's pushing up the guys like Kylan Granson, some Jahan Dotson, guys like that. It's not that I want those bottom end guys, but I do think that the top end guys here are a bigger priority than a lot of them, because obviously they're really good.
Yeah. So the cheaper guys just allow you to get up to the guys that you actually want. Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned Theo Johnson. I think he's had a pretty strong role so far with Jackson Dart. Scored a couple touchdowns last week, 5,800 projected for 37% flex, 1% captain ownership. I can pull up his numbers over the past 2 weeks, but not a huge priority for you because of the price tag.
I am getting a decent amount. I have 5% captain, 28% flex. I have him projected for 26 flex and 4 captain. So I'm pretty close to the field, technically a little bit over, but basically in line with the field. I do like him here because we have seen Jackson Dart funneling passes towards tight ends. We've seen it with Theo Johnson getting 0.25 targets per route run in Dart's 2 starts, and Daniel Bellinger also at 0.25. Not saying that in the sense of you should be jamming Daniel Bellinger, but it does kind of reinforce to me that I think you're seeing Jackson Dart specifically throwing specific types of routes and to specific spots when you've seen these huge elevations in targets for both of the primary tight ends on the Giants. And then also you do have a path here where not only are there, of course, targets open with Neighbors out and Slayton out, but you could certainly just see more 2 tight end sets where, yeah, they prefer using Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot, but you can move him outside and then use one of Hyatt or Bo Collins, and then you have Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson. So maybe you get an increase in routes. Johnson already running a lot of routes, running like 70 to 75%, but maybe that gets even higher because they do go 2 tight end more. Obviously, that is an argument for Daniel Bellinger as well, and even Chris Manhurst to some extent. But that is, one other way that the Giants could play this, because I can't imagine that they're going into this game saying, like, yeah, I think the key to success is having both of Bo Collins and Jalen Hyatt on the field as much as possible. That's, another potential benefit for any of the tight ends on the Giants.
Yeah, true. So with that said, are you getting too much of Bellinger or Manhurts?
I have 8% Bellinger right now. I have 10% Manhurts.
Over the past 2 weeks with Jackson Dart starting, 26% rep participation for Bellinger. Again, now with he could see benefit from Darius Slayton being out, so maybe that number jumps. Had already seen 5 targets. Theo Johnson, 12 targets in 2 games with Jackson Dart, so that's pretty promising role there. 63% rep participation. Maybe we see those numbers go up a little bit too with Darius Slayton out. Just a lot of different ways this could go with Darius Slayton out. Wow, which is funny because Darius Slayton, you don't necessarily think of him as being a huge impactful player, but 10 targets in those 2 games, 59% rep participation. There is some opportunity here for other people to benefit. Do we have any other notes on tight ends?
No, but just to kind of like follow up on that too. It kind of just plays, and again, like, who knows what the Giants' game plan is going to be here. But if you kind of just think about it in terms of, like, we do not have the offensive firepower to keep up with the Eagles. We do not have, we're probably not going to be able to really slow down the Eagles' running game. None of this sets up really well for us. And so one option is to just try and control the ball more. And, not only, and obviously, running the ball is part of that. You do expect them to be run heavy. But again, that points more toward the shorter ADOT guys, Robinson, the running backs, the tight ends, than trying to beat the Eagles by using your 5th string wide receiver on the outside and trying to make big plays. So like, if they were to go more ball control, yeah, it's not the huge splash plays that are really exciting, but in full PPR, it's just potentially putting really good scores up for these more boring, kind of over the middle, shorter ADOT guys.
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense that they might want to just keep the ball, keep it moving slowly, which also, benefits the running backs, benefits the shorter ADOT guys. Let's move on to kickers and defenses. On the Eagles side, we've got Jake Elliott is 5,000. Eagles defense 5,400. Both projected, at least at Run the Sims, for a ton of ownership. I don't know if you're using numbers close to these, Adam. 35 and 33% with 1% each at captain. And then on the Giant side, Jude I don't know how to Makatemni, 33% and 1% captain. Giants defense 3,600 projected for 11% and 0%. I think I nailed that name. How much are you getting to of kickers and defenses?
So I have lower projections total,
okay,
or ownership projections rather. 26% flex, 4% captain for the Eagles, and then 19 flex and 2 captain for the Giants. So I am getting to the defenses. I have 2% Eagles captain, 23 flex. I have 1% Giants captain, 29 flex. Obviously, I would rather have the Eagles than the Giants, but the Giants are really cheap, which is nice and kind of just goes back to the point earlier of really wanting to get to these guys at the top. Have the Eagles projected 2 points higher in the sim projections, which clearly makes sense. So would rather get to the Eagles from an ownership standpoint and a salary standpoint. The Giants are showing up a little bit more for me right now. And it's going to kind of be the same thing at kicker, at least in terms of like priorities. I am getting to more of Elliott though. I have 29% Elliott. I have 14% of Jude, all flex, no captain kickers here. So yeah, nothing like super interesting to say there. I don't think. Neither of these teams looking at pressure rate over expectation in fantasy points data. Neither of them has been very good at preventing pressure. The Giants offense has the second highest pressure rate over expectation this season. The Eagles are third. Neither's been great at getting pressure either, though. The Eagles are, I mean, again, they've both been solid. Neither one's been like top 5, but looks like the Eagles are like 12th. The Giants are like 15th in pressure rate over expectation defensively. So you do have, the potential for some sacks here. Obviously, you would expect Jackson Dart to make more mistakes overall than Jalen Hurts, but Jalen Hurts does, if he's forced to throw, like, he will make some mistakes.
Right.
But, it's more likely that, from a game script standpoint, it's more likely that Jackson Dart is potentially forced into the, fuck it, throw the ball down the field spot than Jalen Hurts is.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Any other notes on this game?
No.
Anything we missed? Okay. Yeah, I think we covered it well enough. I was just looking over the Coach Speak Index, and like Nick Sirianni, clearly aware of the AJ Brown situation, but both Nick Sirianni and the offensive coordinator, which, I mean, obviously you would kind of expect that, but like they've addressed it. Like, yeah, obviously AJ Brown wants to be more involved. Just like I think it is on their minds that AJ Brown wants to be more involved. So I think with the schematic matchup, tending toward more targets plus the narrative, I'm going to lean in, I think, on AJ Brown. All right, Adam, do you have anything else coming out? Anything else you want to shout out?
No.
Promo code Neil to get 10% off on your first payment of any product at Run the Sims. Check it out. I will be back tonight to break this down again after we get the practice squad updates, who has been elevated from the practice squad, any other inactives, that kind of stuff, any other information that we don't have right now. I will have it tonight. I'll be going live about 85 minutes prior to lock, so 5 to 10 minutes after inactives come out. I'll be starting here on the Flannelverse YouTube channel. You can check me out there. In the meantime, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Thanks, guys. I'll see you later.